Okay, well, in the interest of everybody's schedule, I'm going to get started. Others can join as they get to it. Good evening. Welcome to the 2021 Candidates and Budget Night of the Cotuit Fire District, hosted by the Cotuit Civic Association. This is an important meeting, one in which each of the constituent entities that comprise the governing bodies of the Cotuit Fire District will present their proposed operating and capital budgets for the fiscal year that begins on July 1st, 2021, as well as certain other information which will be included in the voting that will take place at the annual district meeting next week. We'll also have the opportunity to hear from candidates for positions on the Board of Water and Fire Commissioners, as well as on the Prudential Committee. It is my fervent hope, and the fervent hope of everybody on the executive board of the association, that this is the last time that we need to conduct this meeting virtually. However, given continued health protocols, this is simply the most efficient way for us to get important information on these topics out to the village generally in a timely fashion. A couple of words on procedures for tonight. First off, be aware that this meeting is being recorded. Once the link to that recording is available, we will post it to the website of the Cotuit Civic Association, as well as to our Facebook page, and we will send it out through our constant contact email list to everybody who is registered on that list. If you are not currently registered, and wish to be, you can send us your name and your email address to us at cotuitcivicassociation@gmail.com, and we'll get you added to the list. We will also send the link to the fire district so that it can be posted on the fire district website as well. All attendees have been muted. I ask that you please remain muted unless and until you are called upon to speak, and remute yourself after you have spoken. Rest assured that this is not an effort on our part to silence anybody. Everybody will have an opportunity to ask whatever questions they might have and to make any comments that they have as well. But with as many people as are going to be on the call this evening, too many open mics create feedback loops, and the inevitable background noise can create real distractions for people who are trying to listen to the important dialogue that is going to take place. So out of respect for your fellow villagers, I really sincerely request you to follow those rules. Stay muted, unmute yourself if you are called on to speak, and remute yourself after you do. Of course, representatives who are going to be speaking on behalf of the Prudential Committee, the Fire Department, and the Water Department should feel free to unmute themselves whenever they have something that they would like to say. In terms of the order of things, budget discussions will come first. There will be an opportunity to ask questions or make comments after each separate departmental budget presentation. To ask questions, we request that you enter them into the chat function. To do that, you should see a chat button at the bottom of your screen. You click on that, the chat box will open. You can enter your question. Make sure that you put in your name and your address, and then press the enter key. And I will read the questions to the presenters in the order in which they are posted. If you don't put your name in, I won't know who is the one who is asking the question, because sometimes people will press the chat and press the enter key, and it will show up as iPad 2. We need to know what your name is when you're asking a question, just so people can be properly identified. If you have a strong preference to ask the question yourself, then put your name and address into the chat function, and I will call upon you when it is your turn to pose your question. Incidentally, these are the same procedures that we followed for last year's meeting, and they seem to work out pretty well that time. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to be as successful as we were then. After the budget discussions, we'll hear from the candidates for positions on the Prudential Committee, the Board of Fire Commissioners, and the Board of Water Commissioners. As you likely know, each of those bodies has 3 members that serve in staggered 3-year terms. That means that each year, 1 seat opens up for election on each of those bodies. This year, we have Rick Pisano, who is running for re-election to the Board of Fire Commissioners. Mark Robinson, who is running for re-election to the Board of Water Commissioners, and Mark Lynch, who is running for the Prudential Committee. We should all be very grateful to these individuals for their willingness to serve the fire district. And I would hope that everybody would be out and voting next Tuesday to reflect the support for these individuals, each of whom is actually running unopposed. I am now going to be turning to the actual budget materials, which we will be discussing. A couple of preliminary notes. These schedules all come from the budget book of the Cotuit Fire District. They roll up into the various articles that will be voted on at the annual district meeting next week. You should know that the warrant articles and the budget book have both been posted to the website of the Cotuit Fire District. That's www.cotuitfiredistrict.org. I would encourage you, either during this meeting or afterwards, before the annual district meeting, to become informed by reviewing those materials. To access them, go to the home page of the Fire District website. Halfway down the page, you will see a heading noted 2021 Annual District Meeting. And you will see under that the links to the warrant articles and to the budget book. It is certainly worth a few minutes of your time to be looking at those. And then just to orient you, the water department will be speaking first, but I just want to spend a moment orienting you to what these worksheets actually show. The water department, you see at the top, that is the department that we're talking about now. The far left column is the article number. What does that mean? It is just the article in the warrants for the annual district meeting that the line item of expenditure rolls up into. You then see across the next 5 columns, figures. The first 3 are actual figures historically for fiscal years 18, 19, and 20. The 4th column is the budgeted figure as approved for the 2021 year. And then the 5th column, column W, is the proposed budgeted item for that line expense this year. The change represents the percentage movement of this year's proposed budget as compared to last year's approved budget. Why are there not actual figures for fiscal year 21? Well, we're still in it. And those numbers haven't been finalized yet. So we compare the proposed budgets for this year to the approved budgets for last year. If you scroll down the page, you will see the listing of the various capital articles that the relevant department may be proposing. In the case of the water department this year, there are none. And then there is a summary of the expenses and the capital outlay, and then showing the total outlay proposed for the department for the year forthcoming. So that's the overview of what these sheets show. I think it's very important that people be aware of those and spend some time looking at them on the website. And with that, I'll turn it over now to the representatives of the water department, who will take us through this proposed budget for their department. And that's going to be led by Scott Horsley, who is the chairman of the Board of Water Commissioners, and Chris Wiseman, who is the water department superintendent. Mark and Chris, Scott and Chris, take it away.
All right, has Scott got up in there? Is he on there?
I don't see Scott yet. I'm paging through. Scott, if you're on and trying to speak, you have to unmute yourself. Chris, I do not see Scott. So
Okay.
if you want to just do it.
Well, usually what we do here is the chairman of the board will talk about the salaries since they're the ones who said it. And I can give you I'm just going to go with proposed and increases there and compare them to last year.
Chris, let me just ask, this Mark Robinson is on. Mark, would you like to speak? In Scott's absence? Okay, so you have to unmute yourself, Mark.
There we go. We're on the Zoom with the budget. You want to get on that? So getting a message to Scott. Anyway, so the water commissioners met this spring and reviewed the budget proposed by the department head, Chris Wiseman. And the numbers speak for themselves. We do have a little bit of shift in the positions from last year. We have eliminated the assistant superintendent position for the interim due to a vacancy. And we have also elevated the 2 operators to become senior operators, given their experience and their skill level. We thought that was appropriate. The intern is a summer intern that we're proposing that would be available to help us research and explore the irrigation policy regarding in-ground irrigation systems. And the rest of this, I think it speaks for itself. There is as you can see, there's a slight decrease, and that's mostly because of the elimination of the assistant superintendent position at this time. All of the other budget items are fairly standard. We did increase testing. You'll see that under.
If you want, Scott, I'll run through the rest of the budget. I just wanted you to handle salaries, and
okay, great.
That'd be great.
So Chris will take over from here, but as you can see, the total budget is essentially flat.
What I'm going to do here is just basically go down and tell you that either increases or decreases, and kind of read it as we go here. You can see that electricity has gone up 2.74%. That's right now is basically because of last year's high pumpage. We have to assume that it's going to be around about the same. So that's based on last year's figures. Engineering is staying the same. We did get a decrease of 7.41% in heating. And that's basically the same thing. It was very warm last year. We didn't need it that much. So we have to base it on the years before figures. Gasoline and diesel, we kept the same, not knowing what the prices will be. Chemicals, we're keeping it the same. Maintenance for mains, the same. We did have less 4.76% in stations. We did renegotiate a couple maintenance agreements at a lower price, so that did go down a little bit. Buildings was the same. Testing, we did increase due to up and coming contaminants, a little extra testing to stay ahead of everything, and because there are some things that we have to test for that we have no choice on. So we did increase that quite a bit to 19.5%, brought it up quite a bit, but it's for everybody's health. Grounds, we had to increase up 17.65% due to we had to renegotiate our lawn contract for maintenance, and we do get trash removal now. We're not allowed to get a dump sticker, so we had to get a new service in there to start to get a dumpster. Our vehicles, we raised that for preventive maintenance and the age of up and coming vehicles, so we had to increase that a little bit more. We left the uniforms the same. We did lower telephones. We're converting over to a voice over internet protocol system. So it's going to save us a little bit of money. And let's see, our consumption is not going to be any different. We're not doing any more in advertising. We did lower a little bit in postage cost based on our 2020 use mailings. We did go up in printing, adjusted for communication and education uses. Other than that, we've stayed the same in supplies, all the way down building supplies, tools and hardware, all the way down to training and education, which we put up 50% because we have a new hire. We did hire a new laborer, and he needs to be trained so he can get all the proper licensing And we did put some there for additional training for other guys that are there now. Other than that, everything else has stayed the same. We level funded everything down. We actually, the expenditures was up about 1.62%, but total between salaries and the budget, we have an increase of 0.15%, which is pretty low. So we have that there. Everything other than that, we did not ask for anything through capital expenses or capital improvements or anything for this year.
Okay, Mark and Chris, thanks. There were a couple of questions posed that actually Mark Robinson answered, but since they were asked, I'm going to read both the questions and the answers for the general public's benefit. Ken Malloy asked if the absence of an assistant superintendent was a temporary thing. Mark indicated that the Board of Water Commissioners intends to re-examine that after a year with senior operatives filling the void. Ken followed up to indicate there's nothing in the budget for assistant for the full year, and Mark indicated that's correct. Jessica Rapgrissetti has a question. Article 5 shows increases from 2020 actuals in electricity, heating repairs, and building grounds vehicles. Without knowing the actuals, why were these items increased substantially?
Can you repeat that? Which one? Article?
Oh, I'm sorry, that is not yours.
No. Okay.
I'm ahead of
I
the
didn't think so.
game.
Yep.
That's
Okay.
Article 5, which is not the Water Department.
We're Article 8, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does anybody have any other questions for the representatives of the Water Department? If not, I had one question, guys. Are you aware of any increases in the actual experience in fiscal year 21 as compared to what was budgeted, which might give you concern for what the budget is for fiscal year 2022?
Not really. No. We based. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just. I didn't notice too much, but if you have something, we did put in a little extra testing and anticipating that we were going to have to. Did you have some others there to say, Mark? I'm sorry.
No, the testing is, we're really trying to get ahead of some of these newer contaminants, the PFAS that people have heard about. We instituted testing before it was even required. We're also concerned about the sodium levels, and so we're doing additional testing for that as well. All of these are still within the safe limits.
Okay. 2 thumbs up from Kathy Campbell. Chris R. says, thank you for your fiscal responsibility. That's Chris Obello. Jessica Rapgrissetti asks, do you still require an extra vehicle without the assistant superintendent?
As of right now, we are still following protocol with everybody in their own vehicle, and until we're satisfied and we believe we can turn that back in, we will once we're all satisfied.
Okay. Anyone else with any other questions for the Water Department representatives? Okay, then we will move on to the Fire Department. The budget discussion will be led by Chairman Rick Pisano, who's the chairman of the Board of Fire Commissioners, and by Chief Rude. Gentlemen, your turn.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you to the Civic Association for the opportunity. Is my sound coming through okay?
It's coming through just fine.
Great. I had been having trouble earlier. The fire department's budget lays out into 4 independent categories. They are wages and salaries, operations, maintenance, and miscellaneous. I'll be covering the first of those, wages, and then Chief Rude is going to speak to the other 3, and then I will be talking about capital expenditures. If you can follow along, the salaries and wages show an increase for the chief's salary. This is a function of a new contract that was negotiated this past fall and will take effect as of July 1st. The increases that you see in wages for the deputy chief also reflect an already existent contract, built-in step raise or term raise. And the increase, the next increase of relevance is the vacation coverage and holiday pay, and then longevity pay are the three categories that show increases. These are all by previous contract with the union. So these were built in and they are calculated based on current salaries and term in service, educational standards met. The one category in which you see a measurable reduction is the full-time injury category, which was dropped from the prior year of $80,000 to $60,000. This is always one of the most difficult categories in the wages and salary section because we're trying to predict on the basis of a little more than history, which is very variable, of years where we have almost no expenses in this category and other years when we're expending hundreds of thousands of dollars. The reduction from 80 to 60,000 this year pertains to a category that the chief will be speaking to when he addresses operations. So I'll leave that for him to tell you where that $20,000 was reassigned. The overall wages and salaries then is increased by 4.03% for the fiscal year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about this category if you have them before I turn it over to the chief to address the next set. Well, in the absence of that, and we can certainly come back to it if there are questions.
Well, just bear with me. I'm sorry. I couldn't
Sure.
get them open, Rick.
Oh,
A question from Chris Robello. Am I understanding that over a 14% increase was negotiated for the chief? And what was the reasoning for that?
that's correct. The salary for the chief had been significantly lower than the Cape-wide average for the chief's position. And he was and is entitled to reimbursement for health benefits that he has not had to draw on the district for. At this salary, as posted, the chief's salary is still substantially under the average salary for chiefs on the Cape. And he has been gracious, I believe, given the quality of his performance, to accept this contract.
Okay. Jessica asks, is the deputy chief a permanent position?
We certainly hope it is. It has proved invaluable to us to aid in staffing when there is a call. It allows us to have a much better coverage of the station anytime a crew is out responding to either a fire or ambulance call.
And that answers a follow-up question from Ken Malloy about the history and reason for the deputy chief. Jessica asks, so we're paying for healthcare benefits for people not taking it? I'm not sure that we understand the point you were making about the health benefits.
The chief had not been using the district health benefits, which constitutes a substantial savings to the district. In this new contract, we have allotted a stipend for partial reimbursement of that waived benefit.
Carol Zace asks, with the fire district being the fire department serving a small village, shouldn't the salary be less than the average? So it actually was in line before this adjustment?
No, it is still 20% below the average of districts on the Cape. That's with the adjustments that we made.
Phil Odens asks if there's a way to accrue for injury pay with funding each year to smooth out the ups and downs.
I am not aware in the Treasury's function if we would be allowed to establish a fund which we could request money for on an ongoing basis that would allow us to cover fluctuations. It has been the case that in the years when we have not needed all these funds, any surplus is returned to the taxpayers at the end of the year or to the general fund. Ray, perhaps you can clarify that. Does it go back directly to the general fund? Any unspent surplus?
That is correct.
Thank you.
You could establish a stabilization fund that we would pay into on an annual basis. I think we'd have to study what the benefits of that would be over time.
Yeah, I think the suggestion is just because that number varies materially in the context of this budget and is something obviously that needs to try to be managed. You could smooth out the financial impact if you created just a stabilization fund, and that's may well be worth looking at, Ray.
Certainly.
Correct.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions with respect to the salary and wage components that Rick has just spoken to? If not, we'll turn it over to Paul Rude. Chief, you can talk about the rest of the items.
Thank you. So most of the operations budget is level funded. The first exception is legal services. Last year, we had budgeted an increase for legal services due to a pending arbitration with the union, which was resolved and never occurred. So we went back to the previously budgeted 35,000. So it shows a decrease, but it's level with the year before. And we obviously don't expect any more arbitrations. The other notable change is professional services. This is the 20,000 that Commissioner Pisano spoke about. We're looking to follow some of the more progressive Western departments and try to be proactive when it comes to injury. So we and most of the other East Coast departments have been reactive and just paid for injuries when they occurred. So we're looking to bring in professional consultants to have a wellness health program for the guys. So spend the money proactively to save more money in the long run. So a wellness program including physical fitness and nutritional well-being. So we're negotiating right now with the union on how that looks and negotiating with a private contractor to bring those services from outside. So we're hoping that the 20,000 will save far more than that long-term for injury. Other than that, everything's level funded for operations, bringing the total increase to 2.58%. Miscellaneous is also level funded at $1,000, and repairs and maintenance are also level funded at 0%. Any questions on operations?
Yeah, Jessica says that there are increases in 2002 actuals in electricity, heating, repairs, and building, grounds, and vehicles. Without knowing the actuals, why were those items increased substantially?
Increases in FY20, is that what you said? I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes, increases in FY20 actual experience.
In maintenance,
Electricity, heating,
electricity.
repairs.
Electricity went down by $700 in FY20 compared to FY19. Repairs, building repairs went down in FY20. Grounds repairs went up by $300 actual. Vehicle repairs went down by $2,000 about, so I don't see any big increases in FY '20 on any of those items.
Okay,
Excuse me.
Jessica, you want to clarify your question? Yeah.
Yeah, so I see it in FY '20 actuals, what was spent on building maintenance was 11,673. In '21 budgeted, we budgeted 17,000. Without knowing actuals for '21 to date, you're saying that's down. Why are we budgeting 17,000 again? Same with electricity, same with vehicle maintenance, and building and grounds and heating, all of those items. Why were they substantially increased in '21?
They weren't.
Well, wait a
They
minute.
weren't. They've all been level funded.
No, wait a
They've all
minute.
been level
Level
funded
funded.
for at least the last.
They were level funded to the budget, chief. They
Yeah, so-
weren't
so
level
in-
funded to the
In
actual.
20, yeah, in '20, what was actually spent on electricity was 9,000. Yet in
Right,
'21,
but
you
what we budgeted
budgeted,
was 14,000
14,000.
and
Why,
spent 9.
yeah, why was there such an increase in all of those items from '20 actuals to '21, and now you're carrying it over again in '22? I just wonder why there was such a substantial increase.
I see your question. So 21 is budgeted, it wasn't actuals. We haven't completed 21, so we don't know what the actuals will be. They will probably be very close to what 20 actuals were. And we budget for more than we expect because we don't 100% know what the electrical market or the fuel market is going to be. So the economy's been a little unstable, so we budget a little more and we give it back if we don't use it. So more than likely FY '20 actual will be FY '21 actual will probably be very similar to FY '20 actual, and the extra money will go back to the general fund.
And if I may add,
Does that answer the question?
Go ahead, Rick.
the experience that we've had with repairs is somewhat similar to what I had spoken to earlier about line of duty injuries. We had substantial unexpected repair expenses, which ended up going well over its budgeted amount. And it's only because we had provided a measure of cushion in some of the other categories within maintenance that we were able to cover it without having to come to a special district meeting to ask for overages. Is that responsive to your question, Jessica?
Yes, thank you.
Was there
Um,
anything else?
Kathy Campbell asks whether you could explain what would happen if the chief decides to take advantage of healthcare coverage under the contract.
Then he would not be entitled
I
to
can answer
the
that question if it helps.
stipend. I'm sorry, Paul, I
Oh.
cut you off.
Go ahead. So the firefighters contract is similar to mine. If the firefighters take advantage and don't take the district health insurance, which has a cost approximately of $25,000 per person to the district, then they are entitled to a stipend, which is half the cost of the least expensive health insurance that they would have otherwise been entitled to, which is the result is about $10,000. So that in my case, that $10,000 is in the salary line item already.
Okay. Did you want then to talk about, in the absence of further questions, would you like to talk about the capital articles?
Yes, please.
Go ahead, Rick.
We have two articles proposed, excuse me. We have two articles for the annual district meeting that we're proposing. One is the replacement of the 7-year-old vehicle for the deputy chief. It'll be 8 years old. I guess it already is 8 model years old. The cost of the replacement is estimated with all the necessary equipment at $48,000. On our long-term capital improvements planning, this vehicle was due to be replaced a year and a half earlier, And we managed to put, with the district's approval, some money into repairs that have extended its life a bit. And we're now looking to replace it with a new vehicle, matching the vehicle that is both used by the new vehicle that in prior year we bought the chief, and which is similar to the vehicles that are used in neighboring districts where we have a certain degree of shared mechanic maintenance services available. If we're all in basically the same vehicles, we can more economically maintain them through that arrangement. The second article is we have the opportunity to do something that the district has wrestled with for a number of years, and some of the commissioners have felt strongly was needed, which is the acquisition of a second ambulance. We have experienced a lot of problems with the current ambulance. It has been in need of significantly expensive repairs repeatedly, and we are very concerned about its longevity. This opportunity is to get a used ambulance in good shape for an arrangement that would allow us to supply it with advanced life support systems, so it would be a fully equivalent second ambulance. Chief, would you like to speak to the backstory on this article?
Sure. So we have about 30 ambulance calls a year where our ambulance is either not in service or on a second call and not able to respond to a subsequent medical call. So about 30 times a year, we're required to depend on mutual aid from surrounding communities, which comes at a delayed response to our residents. The other issue we have is with mechanical. Our ambulance is getting ready for replacement. It's due next year. It's wasn't the most reliable ambulance. It's this particular model was not known for being reliable and is known for lots of problems. And this year has brought on pretty much every one of those problems and exceeded our maintenance budget for vehicles. So the idea of a spare ambulance is that if this ambulance is otherwise detained on another call, our secondary or standby crews can render aid to our citizens at a reduced timetable. And if our current ambulance goes down for maintenance, we have something available to run the second call. This past year, our ambulance at one repair incident, it was down for over a week out of service. We were able to beg and plead, and we got a spare backup ambulance from a manufacturer. Just got lucky to find one that we borrowed for the week, but that's not something we can count on every single time. So this will, cover those down periods of our current ambulance, which they do break from time to time, and this one's breaking more than others. And if next year, in the last year of service of this ambulance, it were to blow an engine, which these particular models are known to do, we could simply park it and not have to put the tens of thousands of dollars into it, and we could use the backup ambulance. This backup ambulance also is going to come as a shared arrangement with Sandwich Fire. So they are going to provide the basic life support supplies, which will probably cost about $30,000. We would provide the advanced life support equipment, which is going to be about $30,000. We would pay for the ambulance, the upfront cost, which would be about $35,000, and they would take on the maintenance responsibility for good. They estimate, their mechanic estimates this used ambulance in a backup capacity could last us 5 or 6 years. So it's a backup resource, last 5 or 6 years. We'll have essentially zero maintenance cost to us because Sandwich will take over the maintenance, and it'll be positioned in our station as a second resource unless Sandwich has several ambulances that go down, and then we would shift it to them for their use until their ambulances went back, and then we would take it back again. Obviously, if ours went down, we would get priority because we don't have a backup ambulance. So it's a cost-effective way to give ourselves a backup resource. If we were able to service most of those 30 calls that we miss right now, the medical insurance that we would collect would easily pay the cost of the $35,000 for the ambulance over its lifetime. So it essentially, the only cost is the supplies we would put into it. Any questions?
Yeah, there are a couple of, Chief. First, you just said a number of
Sure.
35,000. The capital item says 65,000.
The capital
The
item,
cost of the ambulance is 35,000. Yeah, and it's another 30,000 for the ALS supplies, so that it could be in service, ready to go as a second resource.
Right,
the
but so
total
we still have
cost
to
is
be thinking about the
65.
cost of
35 for the Cost of the
$65,000.
vehicle and 30,000 for the. Say again, I'm sorry.
I said we still have to be thinking about the cost of the vehicle to be in service at $65,000, right?
yes.
The cost of the vehicle to be in service is a total of 65,000, correct?
Right, okay. A couple of
But the
questions related.
medical-
I'm sorry, go ahead,
medical
Ray. Go ahead.
Okay.
Chief?
I was just going to say that the cost of the ambulance in service is 65. The cost of the actual used vehicle is 35. So a total of 65 to have a in-service ambulance ready to go and be able to do 2 calls at the same time.
Understood. A couple of questions that relate to the ambulance. Number one is, where does it get housed? And this is a question that 2 people have asked, is where does it get housed and do we have the space for it? That's Chris Robello and John Gardner. Do we have the room
It
for
would
it?
be in our station, so it would remain in our station. It would remain in our station unless Sandwich needed it and they had several ambulances down, then they would take it and use it until they repaired their vehicles and give it back to us. It does fit. It is going to be extremely tight, but we can fit it in our station. This particular one comes out of Brewster Fire as a used one, and it's the smaller ambulance that will actually fit in our bay doors. Most of the surrounding communities have ambulances that will not fit. So we've had departments offered to loan us ambulances, but we can't get them inside our building.
David Johnson asks, do we have the staffing to operate 2 ambulances at one time? A related
We
question
don't
comes
normally
from,
have enough staffing on.
I'm sorry,
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say
So
that.
the
a
answer to
rela-
that question is,
Go ahead, Chief, I'm sorry.
sorry, we're talking over each other. The answer is sometimes. During the day, we've got 3 people on duty, 3 full-time firefighter, 2 of which are medics. They can handle 1 call. Myself and the deputy are also on duty during the day and available other times. So depending on the priority of the call, a basic life support call, we can handle without a problem. For an advanced life support call, we bring in standby after every call. So more than likely, we usually get at least 1 person on standby on call. So we should be able to staff a second ambulance most of the time.
And the related question that I was getting to was from Graham Silman. If a crew is called in on standby, is that really faster than a mutual aid call?
So if the answer is usually yes. If we had 2 calls that came in at exactly the same minute, then it would be quicker to get a mutual aid ambulance to that second call. If our standby comes in 10 minutes after the first call, and that between 10 minute and up to hour and a half period that our ambulance is at the hospital and detained with the first patient, then it's much quicker to have staff in the station ready to go.
Chief, if I could add something, that response time estimate for a mutual aid depends on whether or not the districts around us are not particularly busy, or their substations that are closest to Katuitt are not already out on calls. So the time is pretty variable for mutual aid.
No, that's a great point. Mashpee is extremely busy and seldom has resources available. Marston's Mills Station is fairly busy. If we were to get a backup ambulance out of Marston's Mills, it is probably going to add about 10 minutes to the response time. If they're out, then you're adding close to 20 minutes on a response time from West Barnstable or Centerville or somewhere else. So there is a fairly significant increase in time for getting a mutual aid ambulance.
Ken Malloy asks, is there a formal agreement with Sandwich about the ambulance?
There will be, we've got some drafts that we've been working with. We don't have a signed, final draft signed yet, no.
We wouldn't sign such an agreement until and unless we receive approval to actually go forward with purchasing the ambulance and the advanced life support equipment.
Sure, that makes perfect sense. Allison Lowe indicates that she feels that a spare ambulance is excessive for such a small fire district. Are we moving in the direction of a bigger fire department? And on a related question, it says, why not just rely on mutual aid?
Well, let me speak to part of
I think
that.
that
If you're the second call coming into the station, you don't want to risk being on the end of that 10, 15, 20-minute longer response time. We get a fairly steady flow of business for ambulance calls, and particularly through the warm 6 months of the year. And we want to simply provide responsible and professional fast response.
And then what percent of Katuitt calls are mutual aid calls to help other districts? That comes from Graham Silliman.
other districts. I think it's pretty close to equal. So about 15% of our calls, we depend on mutual aid, and we do about 15% of our calls to other towns from mutual aid. So it's fairly mutual at this point in time. But
So it's-
15%, so about of medicals, about 30. Got
I was going to say 15 as in 1-5. Your audio wasn't clear whether it was 15 or
Right.
50. It's 1-5, 15.
I'm sorry, 15%. So 15%. So we get a mutual aid ambulance about 30 times a year, and we probably send our ambulance mutual aid to other communities about 30 times a year.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions with respect to the fire department budget, either the operating budget or the capital items? Okay, Chief and Rick, thanks very much. And then we will move on to
Thank
the
you.
Prudential Committee. The presentation is going to be handled by the District Treasurer, Ray Perone. And we will start at the reserve tab. That's what we agreed, Ray, I believe, and continue across to the end and then come back and do the summary page. And it is after that that we will open up to questions for Ray. So I would appreciate everybody taking knowledge of that. Ray, as you're doing that, one question has come in about, and it was directed to water, but not necessarily exclusively water, where somebody could look to see the total value of the capital equipment and assets of the fire district and what the annual depreciation expense might be.
That would be in the annual report. Prudential has just adopted the capital improvement policy as proposed by the policy committee. And I believe that entails posting the list of assets on the website and the capital future plans for the district. So it's not there yet, but it will be shortly. I would imagine within the next 3 to 4 months as we wrap up this year. It's a normal audit requirement, and we'll just move that to the website for everyone to see.
Okay. So we'll start at reserve.
Okay, thank you. As you can see, the Prudential Committee has decided to reduce the amount of reserves going into 22. We have in 21 had provided an additional $30,000 to our normal $30,000 reserve specifically for COVID-related contingencies. Going into 2022, we believe it's prudent that reduce that by half to only 15,000. While everything looks fine relative to COVID, the governor making the announcement about the release at the end of May. But there's also, as we prepared the budget, there was concern about a fall resurgence of some kind. So it seemed prudent to provide that for fiscal 22. And that will be fully funded by free cash. Moving to the finance department, in the salary area, there are basically increases for the clerk stipend of $750 to reflect the added duties that the clerk is assuming in the absence of the administrative staff. The treasurer has a 2.5% COLA increase, and the assistant treasurer has a 4.5% increase, again reflecting added responsibilities in that position going into fiscal 22. Overall, that results in a net salary increase of 4.73%. And I think there may be a math problem in what I gave you, Jim. My apologies for that. I believe it is a 4.7% increase overall.
As compared to the 3% increase that shows here?
Yes, that's what I don't have my calculator to run it, but my one schedule that I'm looking at has 4.7. And then
And
in any
the
case,
total expenditure for personnel services as opposed to the 111,000 is how much?
it's same. It's I believe there's an error in this
The percentage
cell.
increase? Okay,
It doesn't look like there is. It could be that I have an error in my sheet. But the dollar amount is set. I can do a quick calc.
I can do that. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Going down the line, the audit fee and all the rest of those items are level funded. The bond transfer funds are at zero. And that's because in the refinancing approved last year in the fall special district meeting, we liquidated all our short-term debt. So therefore, this year we have no need for the normal refinancing of our short-term debt. The next change is in the postage, and the postage and the annual report below are really just adjusting to the running rate that we see in the expenditures. The largest changes come in insurance. The agent has projected our property and liability premium when we renew in August at an increase to $123,000. He also projects that the new workers' comp policy that we adopted last August will come in at approximately $26,000. That's a $26,000 saving from what we budgeted last year at this time. The change is due to the fact that working with the fire department, we were able to identify a much lower cost policy for accepting a $10,000 deductible. That means that we're liable for the first $10,000 of worker comp claims. Obviously, last year, That $10,000 was more than covered in that line item budget. Going forward, we're going to provide for that by an addition to the stabilization fund, as I'll speak about later. Going back up to computer and copier, which is our IT expense. That increases $3,600 for the transition of finance files to cloud-based retention with secure networks. The next change is in payroll, and basically that's just a calculation of the district's payroll liability from all the increases that were implemented, all the wage changes that were implemented or that are proposed for fiscal 22. The next big change comes in the fees that we pay the town. The town of Barnstable provides us with services to, number one, set the tax rate, and number two, collect our taxes. The collector had a change from an elected to an appointed position a year ago. And so we were able to sit down with the town and reach an agreement on how we should pay for that going forward. And that amount is $7,400. And that's what the actual for 21 will be. So we'll be returning some funds on that budget item. And going forward, it will be about that $7,000 adjusted for inflation as we go forward. Summarizing then, we have a 3% wage increase that's offset by a 10% reduction in expenses, largely insurance, for a net overall of 6.3% decline in the amount of money needed to fund the finance operations.
Ray, let me just interject for a moment. The 3% figure is correct.
Okay, so it's my cheat sheet that's wrong.
While we're here, it might be easier just to ask some questions that people have already posed
Sure,
because it relates to this itself.
yeah.
Ken Malloy asks, how much is in the reserve fund now?
I don't have it off the top of my head, and I can't get offline to find it. I'll get back and let you know. It's a good question.
You could provide that information to me, Ray, and then I can send it out to everybody.
Excellent. I will do that.
Jessica Rapgrassetti asks, what is the employee assistance program?
That's a district-wide program that is used by many organizations to provide outside support for employees. I don't know if the fire department has used it. My experience in using it, if there is some traumatic episode that the fire department has to deal with, it provides a resource for those firefighters and EMTs or paramedics to seek counseling outside the organization. It is used by a number of districts and also by nonprofit and public organizations as well.
Jessica, is that a union requirement?
No, that is not. That is the decision of the Prudential Committee and in consult with the fire commissioners.
Allison Lowe asks about what we can expect with property insurance increases if the district acquires the elementary school. I would suggest we hold that to the discussion of space needs because I know that you're going to specifically talk about that at that point.
Very good.
Okay. So then we can go to public buildings.
Public buildings, which in essence means Freedom Hall. And in the salary line, although it shows a small increase, it's actually, we're providing a 2.5% COLA for the maintenance individual who helps us at Freedom Hall. There was a budget correction from last year resulting in the lower increase this year. There's only really two items. One, we adjusted the phone for the experience that we're building maintenance for the needed repairs on the bathroom, which will require an additional $1,000 for those repairs. Overall, a 5% increase in the overall budget from year to year. Any questions on that budget?
Seeing none, we can move to streetlights.
Streetlights are level funded. We left the electricity at the same level. It looks like we may come in lower, but we're going to leave it there until we build up enough experience to have comfort in reducing it. The maintenance is just an unknown, and we budget at that level to anticipate what may go wrong.
And what has been the historical experience, Ray, for in fiscal 21? Do you know offhand?
It's like $400 so far in 21. So it's you have 2,000, 1,000, 100, and 400. But it could be that you will get more lights reported as AWOL as we move into the summer. So we'll just have to see. But it does vary all over the lot.
Yep. It's a small number anyway.
Exactly.
Seeing no questions on that, we'll move to library.
Library is a $990 increase at $24,295. And we are going to fund that 255, excuse me. We're going to fund that with free cash.
Okay, we move then to debt.
Here we see the some of the savings that we generated through the adoption of the refinancing last fall. Without getting too far into the weeds, basically we had $2 million of debt, 1 million of short-term, 1 million of long-term, and we converted that $2 million into $1.5 million of long-term debt. So this year we have no need for the refinancing, as I mentioned earlier, and that results in a $143,000 reduction in our debt financing, and that's despite the $162,000 increase in the long-term funding. So overall, $143,000 reduction in the funding for debt service for the coming year. Any
Okay.
questions?
No, I'm just looking at comments because some people have asked questions about the other things.
Sure.
Fran notes that we're actually currently in the process of replacing a street light on Old Post Road. So that's the kind of thing that's going to impact the expense in that category.
Yeah.
And Allison Lowe indicates that she strongly supports the EAP program for the fire department.
Yeah.
Untreated PTSD is a serious problem for uniformed services personnel. And so people are aware this category that we were just talking about is debt service. It's not the debt itself. It's the payments that we have to make on the outstanding debt of the fire district. Then we can move to employee benefits.
Employee and retiree benefits will experience a reduction in the coming year. And that, again, relates to this medical option, which the fire commissioners have designed and the Prudential Committee supports, whereby an individual who can have the health insurance provided by a family member can opt out of the district program and receive a stipend for that. The results, I think the chief gave the rough economics of it's practically a 2-for-1 savings for the district for each individual. And as you can see, the health insurance premiums we know are going up by 3%. And we're able to offset that increase by people moving out of our program, finding coverage through other family members and providing us with that decline. That's about $15,000 net. There's another $10,000. The county assesses us for our share of the county retirement, and that's predicated on the number of people, their seniority and wages, or rather their age and wages. And this year that bill declined by $10,000. I would not anticipate that decline to continue. The requirement that the county has is to be fully funded by, I believe it's 2034 or 5, which will pretty much preclude further reductions in that assessment going forward. OPEB is level funded, and that is based on our latest actuarial study of our OPEB liability. So overall, the reduction is approximately $23,000, and we are going to fund a portion of that, $240,000, with free cash and raise the balance through taxes. Any questions on benefits?
Yes. Jessica asks, the $42,530 cost of options is for how many stipends?
Four or five? I think it's 4. Correct, Chief?
He held up 4 fingers, so I'm assuming it's 4.
I think that's a positive sign.
Should be 4, correct. It's a little over $10,000 per
Yeah.
person.
And it was the math that the chief gave it. Twice that would be the cost that we would be paying for a coverage, because it's generally family coverage if they're getting it from a family member.
And if the employee opts out of medical coverage, Bruce asks, how much of the stipend do they receive?
$10,000 roughly.
Okay. Someone has asked a question about the library. Just couldn't get to their keyboard in time.
Yeah.
But I think it's separately been answered. It was about library funding, and does the fire district have a commitment to the library? Graham Silliman has pointed out that support for the library is officially in the district bylaws. And just to be clear to people, the library is not completely funded by the town of Barnstable. It does get a tremendous amount of support. It gets partial funding from the town, but it also gets support from private donations and from the fire district. Okay, any other questions on employee benefits? Seeing none, we'll move to stabilization.
As I mentioned earlier, the Prudential Committee has authorized a $10,000 increase in the general stabilization fund to cover the exposure, not the bill, but the exposure that we have through the high deductible workers' comp policy. So that $10,000 helps generate $26,000 of annual savings. The stabilization for the water department is predicated on the meter count each year, and we get that from the fire department and provide that each year. So far, the count has been stable. The collections, which is also in the bylaws, I have to adjust for. The collections were down very, very slightly on meter fees, and that would be reflected in the 21 actual figures.
Ray, this is my question. the $10,000 increase because of the higher self-insured retention on workers' comp,
Right.
is that based on a consultant's estimate, or is that based upon our experience, or what is the basis for that $10,000 increase?
That's the policy. We've accepted a $10,000 deductible.
That's the maximum deductible for the period, or that's per
For the
occurrence?
period, yes,
Okay, got it. So that assumes that the entire deductible gets paid out.
exactly.
Okay. Okay, then seeing no other questions on stabilization, we'll move to space needs.
The space needs budget has been broken down into 3 areas, 2 articles. The first 2 areas are in the first article, and they relate to the acquisition of the property and the maintenance of it for 1 year. In the acquisition, we provided for the legal costs, title insurance, environmental study that are usually attendant with the acquisition of any commercial property. We've added a $2,000 contingency to that. The first 3 items are all based on specific quotes from council and from a local environmental study organization based on the Cape. The second part of that article relates to maintaining the property for 1 year. Property and liability coverage will be $4,000, again, based on a quote from our insurance agent. Electricity, I believe the town indicated it was somewhere around $3,000. We're providing $4,000, and that's based we would be spending on electricity in that building during the coming year. Just got to note that my internet connection is unstable, so if you lose me, wave your hand, Jim.
I will. You do periodically get a little blurry in your words, but so far it's worked okay.
Okay. The second estimate, or the third estimate, is, it's actually a second estimate, third item, is a $4,000 provision to drain all the water so that we can mothball the heating system. So we're not paying to heat the building during the year we're evaluating whether it is to be kept or not. And then finally, we provide a $10,000 contingency to cover needed repairs to protect the property, such as patching the roof, replacing a window, or similar items. The total of those two is $45,000, and that will be funded by free cash. Next, we turn to the determination of the costs related to various alternatives that the property could be put to for the district, including demolition. We don't have an accurate estimate for any of the alternative uses, including demolition. We have an indication from the town, but we have no details, nor do we know what that actually comprises. So the District Prudential Committee has decided to engage the same people that were involved in the initial space study, a firm called Brown Lindquist, or Lindquist Brown, which has changed to Aztec Architectural. It was felt that those people had the background, the data, and the experience with the district, so they would have a leg up starting an evaluation of how this property may or may not fit into the district requirements. Second of all, there was a inquiry put to the Attorney General. The Attorney General agreed that this would be a continuation of the already approved space study, thus eliminating the need for the time-consuming and expensive RFP process. To act as a countercheck against the firm, it is proposed to engage a project manager who would provide knowledgeable oversight of the cost development provided by the architectural firm, as well as if the property were to be converted or developed for district use. There is a legal requirement to have a project manager, and this project manager would then have a head start on the knowledge of what was involved. Finally, we're provided a small sum of money for a district meeting for the voters to determine what course of action they wish the district to follow. The total of that is $207,500, and that again would be fully funded by free cash.
Okay, as you might expect, Ray, there are going to be a series of questions on this, some of which you'll be in a position to answer, and some of which it may be that people on the Prudential Committee would be better served to answer. From Jessica, to date, how much has been spent on space needs studies for the district?
$38,900 and call it $50.
And that is out of an original authorization of?
25,000, which was then augmented by a transfer from the demolition article of 24,500. That demolition article related to the building next to the existing fire station. So the total funding was 49,500.
Okay. With regard to Article 17, where did the 207,000 come from, and 207,500 come from, and where and who authorized it? And if
Nope.
Article 17 passes, will an RFP be issued?
Nothing has been authorized yet. It is the voters who will authorize that article or not. The various components were predicated on conversations with the architectural firm, and that represents, as I indicate, a vendor quote. They also estimated what the cost of a project manager would be. So they have a quote of $165,000. There's an estimate of a project manager for $40,000, and I predicated the special district meeting cost on our September meeting.
Who authorized the vendor to provide a quote?
It was requested by the chief on behalf of the school committee.
Okay. I am bouncing back and forth because I'm trying to get questions as they are related to each other. Carol Zase has the following question. It seems to her that Article 17 is really requesting approval for a feasibility study related to the use of the school and not really a space needs study, and was written this way only to try to use leftover funds from the previous space needs article. Is this accurate?
I would not say that it's accurate. I believe that the Attorney General indicated that I think what was presented to the Attorney General is we had a space needs study. There is now a new component which could be evaluated as part of those space needs. And therefore, the same authorization for the space needs would be, could be applied to this expansion. And specifically, an RFP would not be required.
Will that previous study be used for the new one? And is there a copy of the previous study available?
I think the answer to both, no, I don't think, the answer to both of those is yes. If it is, if the original study, I believe, was posted, it was certainly subject to an extensive Prudential Committee meeting. If it wasn't posted, I will get it posted.
Okay, so there was actually a space study that was issued.
It was a presentation made to the Prudential Committee and then made at an informational meeting for district voters. It wasn't a formal special, excuse me, it was a special district meeting. It was presented at that meeting. I will get whatever document exists and get it posted.
I just to be clear, I think the question is asking about an actual space needs study as opposed to just a suggestion for what might be built at the fire station and High Street.
I'm not sure I understand the difference. When they did the space needs study, they evaluated the water department's use of space and their needs, the fire department, and the district office.
I think Chief wants to make some qualifying statements. Paul, go ahead.
Yeah, the original space needs study was focused on the Finance and Prudential Committee and Finance Department and on their space needs. This new study has a large portion of to study the actual needs of the district as a whole. So what space the fire department needs to perform its duties, the water department, and the Prudential. So it's a complete district study to what the district needs for space over the the next 20 to 50 years.
I know that I believe the architects spoke with I know they visited the water department. I think the water department at that time opted out of the district study. Hence, that's where the resultant focus.
Okay. A question asked by Bruce, will the $207,000 be used to examine use of the $300,000 property the district previously purchased? I'm assuming that relates to the property on High Street. And if not, what will become of this property?
It would not include that because that property is basically unavailable. I'm searching for the word that OSHA would describe. It's not a usable structure. So I don't think that the space needs would include that building. What was the second part of the question?
If not, then what would be happening to that building?
No determination has been made about that, whether it's to be maintained or demolished. Unless one of the Prudential members wants to speak to that.
Jim, it's Fran.
Yes, Fran.
So, so the Nickerson building is would not be able to be remodeled into district offices. It was looked at during the space needs study, and it would need to be completely removed. And 2 years ago, when we had an estimate for putting a building on that site that would house the treasurer and the clerk, and space for the Prudential Committee to keep records, the cost of a 1,500 square foot building with a basement with basically 5 rooms, including the mandatory 2 bathrooms, was $1.72 million to build on that site. So people need So that's why that project didn't go further. We did thoroughly discuss it at a special district meeting, which was a result of a mistake made in the, caused at my fault, for the amount of money that was posted. I had planned to bring it back up at last year's annual meeting, but then COVID struck, and I didn't think it was appropriate to be discussing building buildings in the middle of the COVID pandemic. But I think that what they did looking at the fire station and the Nickerson building can just all be wrapped in. They already have the information that they need on those buildings for space needs to use when they go forward and look at the school property.
So I guess the answer then would be that if in fact the school property ends up housing the fire department, then the Prudential Committee would at that point look to what it would do with the High Street property, including the possibility of selling it.
Right. But once that building is demolished and gone for and right now it's grandfathered. Once it's gone, then the new zoning rules take effect for anybody who would want to do anything with that property, which I think might be a problem, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. There are some questions that aren't specifically related to numbers, and they are people's observations relating to the school issue generally, and I'm just going to read them. Graham Silliman says, couldn't the town do a better job of handling the disposal of the Gatuit Elementary School, including expectations that the needs of the village are taken into account? The town did this in 2017 with the demolition of the Osterville Bay School and Madison's building new rec fields and a rec center. And a second question from the same gentleman, does this activity even fit within fire district bylaws, and is it the best way to meet district space needs?
Can I answer
Yes, please
some
do.
of
Fran.
that? The town doesn't, the town just wants to get this building off its hands. They really do not want to pay the money to demolish it. If they do pay the money to demolish it, their plan would be to sell 3 2-acre lots to recoup their cost for demolishing the building. And there would be no control over what would be built on those lots. The town allowed the Bay School in Osterville to deteriorate and finally had to take it down. The Gatuit School's not in that situation, and I'm not exactly sure that the community center that they're talking about at Osterville, Jessica may know the answer to this, but the quest to get that built has been going on for at least 10 years now, so I'm not so sure how close that is to becoming a reality. But the town just wants to wash its hands of the Gatuit School. They'd rather transfer it to us than keep it and have to decide how they're going to get rid of it otherwise.
And Graham Silliman follows to say, how does Fran know about the town's intentions? I can tell you that there were last year several meetings of the Town of Barnstable's Asset Management Advisory Committee in which the town's intentions became very clear. The Prudential Committee did establish a school committee, and we have had several discussions with representatives of the town. So we have a pretty good idea of what the town's intentions with respect to this property are at this point. Fran, do you have anything else to say in that regard?
Nope, all set. Thank you.
Jessica asks, has there been discussions with the town to share in the cost of demolition of the school if the district votes down Article 17 and the district wants the building demolished?
I guess I can speak to that. At the moment, we aren't in any discussions with the towns because they're waiting to see the outcome of the whether or not we're going to accept the transfer of the school at the annual district meeting. Also, started looking into inquiring to see if any CPC, community preservation funds would be available for Katuitt in terms of either, demolishing the building or, if the village decides it wants to rehab the building for other uses.
Carol Zayas says there was a conceptual design study for a mixed-use plan of a fire station, district offices, and other community spaces that was presented at a fire commissioners meeting. And I assume that is, Carrie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm assuming that relates to the school building. Was that work done internally, or if not, how was it funded? And can that be used to reduce the costs of the new study?
I'll defer to Chief for that.
Go ahead, Chief.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did the architectural with consultations with water treasurer and district officials. I drew the AutoCAD drawings for that conceptual drawing for the school. So there was zero cost to it. I did it on my own time. And could it be used? Yeah, we've also, the commissioners and myself have done space needs analysis for the fire station in conjunction with architectural drawings that would help the study, I believe, make it more efficient and hopefully have brought the cost down to where it is. Can I make a quick comment on what the study really entails?
Sure, please do.
The $200,000 study is aimed at first identifying what independently identifying what the real space needs are for the district. What space do we need to continue to provide services to the community over the next 50 years? And second, it intends to look at what the least cost option for providing those services are. We have asked them to look at improving current facilities to meet district needs for the next 50 years. To look at the cost of new construction to meet needs for the next 50 years, and the cost to see if this opportunity is going to be a low cost option for the district. So to see if this opportunity of the school structure would reduce our costs. So the intention is to solve the district facility needs in the lowest cost possible. And that's what the whole purpose of this article is. And possibly at the same time, we end up with community space as a side benefit, but the intention is first to solve district facility needs at the lowest cost possible.
Jessica points out, incidentally, just as a clarification of what Fran was talking about, the CPC funds cannot be used for demolition. Graham Silman and others have asked, would a least cost option also include considering a consolidation with adjacent fire districts? Chief?
We're willing to look at that. We have looked at it. We've talked about it in fire commissioners meetings. The neighboring fire departments don't have any interest at this point in time in consolidating with us. We would increase their costs. If we contracted our services to a neighboring fire department, our costs would also increase. So, the most logical department we could consolidate would be with Centerville Fire. If we take on a portion of their overhead related to our call volume and pay 3 firefighters to work in Katuitt and get rid of my position, the deputy's position, their contract costs are significantly higher than ours. So our overhead and cost structure is significantly less than any contracted option we've been able to identify. But we're 100% open to talking about any consolidation or more efficient operations if anybody's got better ideas. But yes, we have looked at consolidation. We have looked at contracted services, and we have not found a lower cost option.
I assume, Chief, you've done that really from the perspective of the fire department alone. Has there been recent considerations of that for the district as a whole, including the water department?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Because there may be cost savings on that side of the equation that could.
There could be. maybe we need to put a committee together of groups to take a better look at it. Absolutely. But either way, whether we consolidate or not, we desperately need a facility which will house an ambulance and a fire truck and 3 firefighters in Katuitt. Whether we consolidate with anybody else or not, there still needs to be staff and equipment here. Without such, every one of our property insurance bills will more than likely double. So the financial cost to not having equipment and staff in Katuitt is higher than the cost of having us here. Not to mention the pure safety cost and the time difference that would be to call for an ambulance now versus not having staff in the community.
Thanks. Chris Rebello asks, how much money would be saved if the district voted to demolish the school rather than let it sit for another year? Well, I assume that's really the annual operating expenses that are on the chart, which is the $22,000. Is that correct, Ray?
Yeah, that would be correct. But we don't really know what the cost of demolition will be.
Right. We do have the estimate the town had done,
Exactly.
which was about $900,000.
Yep.
Carol Zays asks, how is the Prudential Committee planning to obtain public input into the possible other uses of the school building? Fran, would you like to speak to that?
You know, other than the described uses, I'm not quite sure what other uses people have. I know that at the asset management, people, you know, said things like a daycare center, you know, apartments, renting space to, you know, small businesses, you know, having a community center. And all of those things have either liability concerns or, you know, we need to hire somebody to become a manager of the building to manage all of that, those concepts. Some people spoke about turning it into apartments. I'm not sure that we can do that. And I don't think that really that any of the above are things that a fire district really should be doing. I don't think that that's in the fire district's purview. I think that's more in a town's purview. You know, but I think we've heard just about, you know, so the school committee narrowed it down to what we thought were appropriate alternatives for the use of the building.
And I would add that we've had several public meetings, and I think that we will be looking to have 1 or 2 public meetings in which we can have an opportunity to get public input into alternative considerable uses. Carol Zace asks, has the water department identified any partial uses of the school building that they would like to see? Mark Robinson, Scott Horsley, Chris, you have anything to say in that regard?
Scott Horsley, I'll just speak on that briefly, and then I think Tom may want to speak as well. But we have submitted at least 2 comment letters clarifying our concerns about what might happen. So those are on record, and basically we don't want anything to go in there that's going to increase a water quality risk to the well field. It does lie within a Zone 2 area to one of our wells and directly up gradient. We have talked about a number of features that could go on the property to help water quality improvement, including a stormwater mitigation system along the driveway heading in. And also, if any use is continued there, a upgrade to the septic system to an innovative alternative septic system. But again, we would want to see that would be a net reduction in loading of anything. But I don't know if Mark or Tom want to add anything to that, please feel free.
Well, I think, Scott, the question actually was also about whether the water department has any desire to have any use of the space in the school building.
Yeah,
And would that be part of the new space needs study?
We've talked a little bit about that. I think at this point, we don't really see a use that we could legitimately suggest there. But perhaps longer term space study needs, there might be a possibility for office space or something for her to move, but right now we're pretty happy where we are. And don't see any real shorter, medium-term needs. But again, I'll let others speak to that. Tom, I know you've been attending the meetings.
Yeah, hi, Jim, this is Tom Hopkinson.
Hi, Tom.
We initially had thought that it might serve a purpose as a potential site for a treatment plant, but given the bulk of our water comes from a different location than that pump station 3, I think we've kind of backed away from that at this point. So the building itself really, I don't think provides much for the water department at this point. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. There was a question that had been posed earlier that I held till now because it relates to the school, was from Peter, and I'll apologize if I butcher your last name, Peter Prikaki, which was, has the water department aware of any water quality issues that arose from the use of the school by the Azakatula Elementary School or the Waldorf School?
Hi, Jim. It's Chris, what superintendent. We haven't had any issues from them, and I can't think of one, and I've been there for 30 plus years.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, we haven't detected anything. However, as in any septic system that lies within our zone 2 areas, we have a pretty definitive study from the Massachusetts Estuaries Project that provides a probable load of nitrogen from these systems. So that system, as it was used as a school, certainly would have been loading its share of nitrogen into the groundwater that then flowed to the nearby well. We could probably back out that load from the flows at the site. But again, I agree with Chris, we haven't detected anything unique in terms of impact other than that, which would be from really any septic system uses within our zone 2 areas.
Gray and Silman asked, does housing have a liability concern? I assume that relates to the idea that the fire district would somehow build housing on the site. The one thing I would add to what Fran said is that the town has made it clear in the discussions that were held so far that if the fire district looks to sell off any part of the property, that property would revert back to the town because they are not entering into a transaction to enable the fire district to make money or to cover costs. They are looking to transactions largely from their perspective to protect the water supply. So we would not be in a position to, as a fire district, to build housing there. And certainly that's not really within the fire district's purview as well. David Johnson asked if the water department has investigated any state funding that could be used to protect the zone 2 contributing area for demolition of the building and maintenance as open space.
This is Mark Robinson, Water Commissioner. We haven't investigated any state funding for demolition because we're not on record as proposing demolition. So I think it's really up to the district to decide what the use is before we investigate any state funding for any particular purpose.
Would you happen to know offhand, Mark, if it's likely that any such funding would be available?
There are funds to protect Zone 2. It's called the Public Water Supply Protection Fund, and it's a grant program made to the municipalities and to water districts.
Okay.
It can supply up to half of the acquisition cost. It doesn't pay for demolition.
Well, of course, for us, so that people understand, the transaction with the town of Barnstable is one that enables the town to transfer the property as an intergovernmental transfer. So that is not actually an acquisition by the fire district. It comes to the fire district without payment of any purchase price. Okay, I'm seeing no further questions about this Article 16 and 17, and having lied, there is one. If Article 17 doesn't pass, will there be a special meeting called to authorize demolition? That's a Prudential Committee question, obviously.
yeah. Yeah, if 17 doesn't pass, then, you know, we'll obviously have to have a special district meeting to, if, you know, if the village accepts, if the district accepts the building, but doesn't pass 17, we'll have to have a special district meeting to decide what we're gonna do with the building.
Okay. Then Ray, let's go back to the summary page. Ray Peroni, you still with us?
There we go.
Okay.
Yes, let's quickly run through the summary, which is just a recap of everything that everybody's heard. Articles 3 and 4, the reserve and the finance department, are a total of $407,200, representing a 8.8% decline. And it's intended that that will be funded by taxes. Article 6, or excuse me, Article 5 is 2.19 million for the operation of the fire department. That again would be funded by taxes. There are two capital articles, a ambulance for $65,000 and a vehicle for $48,000, both of which would be funded by free cash. The water department appropriation totals $722,779, in essence level funded with the previous year. Since there's no capital, it shows a larger decline, and that is to be raised by taxes. Public buildings are $23,784, roughly level funded, but that $1,000 increase generates a 5% number. The street lights are level funded, so combining those is a total of $30,784 that will be raised by taxes. The library services of $24,255 will be funded by free cash. The principal and interest debt service will total $395,945. That will be funded through taxes. The employee benefits totaling $948,000 will be partially funded by free cash and of $240,000 and taxes of $708,000. The transfer to stabilization of $80,960 will be funded by free cash. The two articles that we've just discussed related to the school property acquisition or transfer, as Jim correctly pointed out, of $45,000 and cost of alternate use development of $207,500 will be funded by free cash. Part of the funding will be provided by closing a number of articles as laid out in Article 18 of the warrant. That will generate $31,000, which the Prudential Committee is recommending be applied to the space needs study. There is $8,000 that we are required to add to our abatement set aside. We set aside some money each year to provide for abatements that the taxpayers may apply for faulty valuations, et cetera. That is $8,000 this year, bringing the total appropriations to $5,142,858. We offset that amount by local receipts and free cash. Local receipts are comprised of ambulance revenue and water department revenue. We are projecting ambulance revenue at $226,000 and water department revenue at $1,080,000. The $1,080,000 is approximately 85% of what the department is projecting for their 21 estimate. And this eliminates the large increase that we experienced in water rate revenue during the summer. The total of free cash is $710,714, leaving $124,000 of additional free cash reserved for next year. This reduces the amount of appropriations to be funded by taxes to $26,143. And this results in a tax rate using the current valuations, which will be revised, but using current valuations, that will result in a tax rate of $1.93 per thousand, which is 1 penny less than we are experiencing this year. That would result in a savings to the average homeowner of $5.80. Any questions on how we will be funding or how we're proposing to fund the appropriations?
I don't see any questions on that, Ray. Jessica does make a point that she would like the Policy Advisory Committee to investigate into the district holding to Proposition 2.5.
Although we're not legally bound to.
Correct. But that's something for the Policy Advisory Committee to investigate.
No.
I don't see any other questions. Maybe we wore people out. But that is a comprehensive discussion of the budgets. I think that it's been valuable for people to hear it all. Again, you can access the budget book and the warrants on the Fire District website. And we'll then turn to a discussion of the candidates as soon as I check. Okay, that was it. So the first candidate is since we started with the Water Department, we will start with the Water Department again, running for re-election as a member of the Board of Water Commissioners is Mark Robinson. So Mark, do you have a few words you'd like to say?
Thanks, Jim. In the interest of time, very, very briefly, it's been my pleasure and honor to serve for the past 3 years as one of your 3 water commissioners. And I'd like to just take this time to say what a wonderful experience it's been, particularly with my fellow commissioners, Scott Horsley and Tom Hoppenstadt, and the terrific staff that we oversee, Chris Wiseman and Jen and the crew. It makes our job much easier to know that we have really good people working for the district in the water department. And I'd like to continue for another term of 3 years to put some of the knowledge that I've gained in this first term to better use and be a little more knowledgeable in the second term. I'm hoping that people will support my candidacy. Thank you, and happy to answer questions.
Thanks, Mark. I think what we'll do, as opposed to pausing with each individual for questions, is just get through each of the 3 candidates and then open it up to questions for that. For the Board of Fire Commissioners, Rick Pisano, who is the current chair of that board, is running for reelection. Rick, do you have a few words that you'd like to say?
I do, Jim. Thank you. I would like to express my appreciation to you and to the Civic Association for all the work that you do in keeping people informed and involved in the district. It's been my pleasure to serve for the last 6 years on the Fire Commission. During that time, we have recruited and hired an excellent chief and overseen the transition of personnel, approximately 40% of the personnel over those last 6 years. I'm pleased to report that our patient evaluations for ambulance service remain consistently very high. And we have been able to bring the building and operations into significant compliance with the evolving OSHA regulations. I'm interested in running for another term on the board. I would like to be able to see through some of the discussions that we have been evolving about our long-term capital improvement program. When we talk about the needs of the fire department, some of those sound very mechanical, but they have a very human impact. Firefighters experience cancer at twice the rate of most people, and our facility does not have a decontamination facility in it. That's something that in the needs assessment that you heard addressed earlier, I want to see our board move aggressively to try to find ways to provide that service. Our medical supplies are currently scattered throughout numerous storage locations, making inventory control a challenge. We need more space for both supply and a medical services room. Right now, the medical services we offer the district are provided in the lobby, which is really not an appropriate space for it. That's in addition to the mechanical needs that we have. The district has been bearing the cost of buying more expensive than necessary vehicles, both ambulance and fire engines, because we have to buy specialty vehicles to fit in the existing facility. Those are the concerns that the board has been wrestling with, and I'm looking forward to an opportunity to move those concerns forward. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Rick. And for the Prudential Committee, Mark Lynch is running for the open seat. Mark, do you have a few words that you'd like to say?
I will keep this very brief, as I am the only thing standing between now and the end of this meeting. First of all, thank you to everyone on this call. It's been a long call. There's been a lot of detailed information, and I've been very impressed by the level of detail of the questions. It's really quite an impressive presentation. Just very briefly, I have not been on any of the committees. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a 3-year full-time resident of Cotuit, along with my wife, Kathleen. In that time, I've had the privilege to serve on this association's board, the Cotuit-Santuit Civic Association Board. And I've been impressed by that experience to try to give some additional of my time and talent to the community. In addition to that, I've served on the school committee and the negotiating subcommittee for the school committee. I've learned a lot about that issue, which I think is very, very important opportunity for this village that we should be taking advantage of. In that regard, I would encourage everyone, there is still an opportunity to have a visit of the school on May 19th. Please sign up. I think it will be very revealing visit for anyone interested in what that facility might be used for. I'm happy to take any questions, but I would love the opportunity to continue to serve the town.
Thanks, Mark. Do have one question coming in from Ken Malloy for Rick. Do you have a present opinion of the need for a new fire station?
I believe that for the district to be adequately served for both fire and rescue services within the next 10 years, the district will need either a new or substantially remodeled facility. The elementary school building is simply one possible source of proceeding in that direction. But regardless of what happens to that issue, I don't believe we will not be well served in the district if the facilities are not substantially upgraded during the next decade.
Thanks, Rick. I'm just pausing a moment to see if other questions come through. Again, I think we've worn people out. But all kidding aside, these are very important items. I think we benefit as a district that people are prepared, as Mark, Rick, and Mark are, to commit their time to serving the district. And they are all deserving of our support. They are all excellent candidates. And since they're running unopposed, I don't have to worry about offending anybody else. I'm also very grateful to everybody who participated in the call. I hope that the public has gotten sufficient information to be informed voters both next Tuesday on Election Day, as well as next Wednesday at the annual district meeting, which will take place at the Katuitt Elementary School. So with that, I thank everybody for their participation, and I look forward to seeing you next week. And I'm going to end it here. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.